Well, good morning. It is good to see all of you again today on day number 15 of our Lent video series. My name is Pastor Mark. I'm the lead pastor at American Reformed Church here in Hall, and really excited to be with you. If you're tuning in for the first time, I hope that you enjoy this video. What we're doing is we're looking at 40 different names that is connected to Jesus in Scripture, and how does those names teach us about his character, about who he is, what he came to do, and really help us grow spiritually as we prepare our hearts for Easter, really the most important Christian holiday, and I would argue the most important day in the history of mankind. And so I hope that this time that we've been doing this so far, 14 days up to today, and today's day number 15, it's been helpful for you, and it's been meaningful to look at all these different names with me as well. If you haven't done so yet, on our YouTube page, make sure you subscribe and like our YouTube page. We have a lot of great ideas for the rest of the year that we're going to try to leverage this platform a little more in the future with other videos. It's also a way that you can see our services on Sunday morning as well. And so just a little shameless plug for our YouTube page where you're seeing this. But today we are looking at the next title or name associated with Jesus, and that is how Jesus is referred to as the Holy One. The Holy One. And we actually get this from Mark chapter 1. Let me pull the verse up on the screen. And this is actually an interesting place to pull this title from, because it happens with a man who had an unclean spirit, or was dealing with demons inside, and it tells us this. It tells us, and immediately there was in the synagogue, in their synagogue, a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." And so it seems like by this passage that it's not just one demon, but it's multiple demons speaking through this man that knows who Jesus is. And what do they refer to Jesus being? He is the Holy One of God. Now, we don't necessarily use that title to speak of Jesus often. It's not that we talk about Jesus being the Holy One. We know he's the Holy One, and if you have placed your faith in Jesus, you believe he's the Holy One. But where specifically does this name come from? And I believe it actually is rooted in the Old Testament, like many of the passages or many of the titles that we see connected to Jesus. In fact, what I would like to do is, let me pull up my Logos Bible software again and just show you an example of this. And by the way, there's multiple examples of this. It's not just here, but this will help us see possibly where this term Holy One is attributed to Jesus, or what the root of it is. It comes from 2 Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 8, and it deals with the prophet Elisha. And it tells us one day Elisha went on to Shunem, where a wealthy woman lived, who urged him to eat some food. So whenever he passed that way, he would turn in there to eat food. And so essentially this woman is wanting to prepare meals for Elisha. And maybe her husband, just wondered about this and who this guy was. And in verse 9 it tells us, "And she said to her husband, 'Behold, now I know that this is a holy man of God who is continually passing our way.'" A holy man of God who is continually passing our way. And so throughout the Old Testament, many of the prophets, and there's other examples that you could cite in the Old Testament, the prophets were often known as holy ones or holy men, and really what the term holy means in this term, like he's the Holy One, is that he has a divine consecration, I guess you could use, on his life. Like he is divinely set apart for a specific purpose that God had for his life. And so that's how they looked at the prophets. And I believe like that same idea, that idea of a Holy One here is attributed to Jesus by the demons, saying, hey, I know who you are. You are a Holy One. You are one that has been divinely set apart by God for a specific mission. And I think like that is where these demons are getting this connection. The disciples, they actually come to the conclusion eventually. I mean, it took some time, but in John chapter 6, verse 69, eventually they get around to saying, oh yeah, we have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God. And so eventually the disciples realize, okay, Jesus has been divinely set apart. He's been divinely consecrated for the mission that he's been given. And so they decide, they see this divine purpose that he's been given. In Acts chapter 3, verse 14, we also see this being discussed where, it was the question over the Jews on how they didn't release Barabbas, but they instead released Barabbas. I'm sorry. They didn't release Jesus, but they released Barabbas instead. And basically here they're being called out on that. You disowned the holy and righteous one. Here they tag on the idea of a righteous one, but holy one, and ask that a murderer be released to you. And so they're just being called out for asking for Barabbas instead of the Holy One, instead of Jesus, the person that was divinely set apart for the mission that God gave him. And so that is where this term comes from. Now, I guess the question is, okay, that's all wonderful, but what does that mean for us today? Like, if Jesus is truly the Holy One, the one that was divinely set apart, consecrated for the mission that he was given, what does that mean? Well, what it ultimately means is that Jesus, he himself has been given authority over evil. I really believe that. I mean, I think that's why the demons were kind of freaking out a little bit in their boots. Like, they understood the authority that Jesus had over evil. Sometimes we see this battle that is taking place between good and evil, and we make this connection to movies like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or any good fantasy novel that has good and evil, and then we kind of think to ourselves like it's good versus evil, but just like Star Wars, we really don't know who's going to win. So that's why we have to watch all 9 episodes of Star Wars, right? Like, we need to know who ultimately wins, good or evil. And there was times where it seemed like evil could win. Well, that's not the case in the Bible. Like, there is no possibility for evil to win, because we know ultimately not only how the story ends, but we also know who has authority over evil, who has the ultimate authority over evil to fix all the injustices in this world, to fix all the hurts, the pains, to remove all the sins from people's life on the cross, and then to give us victory over death. Another evil, like, who has authority over all evil? That would be Jesus. And it's because he is the Holy One. That's pretty exciting. And I believe like that should give us so much hope and thankfulness and gratitude, not only in Jesus, but for Jesus. Because I know all of us probably know a lot of injustice that's happening in this world. All of us probably could cite to different things that are just downright evil taking place in our world today. and we question, like, when is there going to be victory over those evil things? Well, we can know, because of Jesus being the Holy One, that victory has already been won. We have not seen the results of that victory yet, because what? Jesus has not come back a second time yet. But we can know that vengeance is his, and that all injustice in this world will one day be reconciled back to himself. Because why? Jesus is the Holy One. And so what I want to just ask you to do over the next, the rest of your day is to think about that. Like, what does it mean to you specifically? Like how does that encourage you? How does that give you hope that Jesus is the Holy One? How should you stop and thank God for the fact that Jesus is the Holy One? What injustice are you dealing with or have dealt with in your past that you just need to turn over to the Lord, saying, because I know Jesus is the Holy One, that I know that vengeance is his, and that one day that injustice will be reconciled, that one day that injustice will be overcome by the Holy One, by Jesus himself and what he came to do and what he's coming back to do. I think all of us should just reflect upon that the rest of the day. And I hope, again, these videos are helpful. It's day number 15 today. Tomorrow's going to be day number 16. I can't believe it. And we are just moving along. And so I pray that all of these things are creating, all these words are creating a wonderful mosaic of who Jesus is, and will only help us grow in our faith. And so God bless. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless.